Now for global business updates, Rotus Oddiri joins us.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. Good morning, Vimbai. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all our viewers out there. Where else do we start but the UK? Markets not really reacting much, particularly the pound sterling, maintaining about $1.27 in early European trading this morning. And that's pretty much because the polls, and this is the importance of polls, right? The markets had already baked in the fact that Labour was going to be winning. So not much in terms, I think the FTSE 100 should open in positive territory. We'll see how that happens when the markets open up. But the key thing here, when the markets will react, is when Keir Starmer starts to implement policies. And particularly, he's got a big majority, so he's not going to have much opposition in terms of getting policies passed through. I just want to take you back to a video that Rishi Sunak posted on his Twitter page in the lead up to the elections. Pretty funny. He used an anime cartoon warning people to, quote, stop the supermajority, and we'll pick up from there. Take a look. So, I'm not sure you would believe that he actually posted that, but he did. It was actually on his page. Now, in terms of the supermajority, what does it mean? We spoke extensively with Ifosa Alui, who's the head of global investments and Sarkori Global Investments. Here's what he said about what it means for the UK.
In speaking about the supermajority, it has its pros and it has its cons, right? It doesn't take away, the robust debates that we're going to see. But with the supermajority, just simply means that, the Labour Party would basically have its way when it comes to policy. So obviously, you're looking at policy when it comes to taxes. It's talked about the whole NHS situation and how he wants to resolve all of that, although there are no clear plans. It also talked about migration, the whole Rishi Sunak plan about deporting people to Rwanda. Of course, they're going to scrap that. So from a policy standpoint, it just simply means that, if Labour goes ahead to win a supermajority, they're just going to have a field day doing what they want to do.
Now, you heard, and this is something Rufai has brought up. Rufai brought this up after the debates, that Keir Starmer never really explained his plans. And you heard Efosa also say, we haven't really had clarity. The market's not going to ask him, because if you look at the list of economic challenges that are facing him, you've got, the list is long. GDP growth in the first quarter was revised upwards to 0.7%. It's been tepid, right? Low revenues, high debts. You have to raise I don't know how he's going to do this, but we're going to see. He said he's not going to raise taxes, so we have to see where he's going to get the money from. We were talking yesterday about the Asian markets and the low amount of IPOs in Hong Kong. It's the same thing in London. The London Stock Exchange has a low number of IPOs. You have companies that are choosing to go and list in New York rather than list in London, so he's got to face that as well. And then the NHS, the underinvestment, the long wait times, they've got a doctor shortage, they've got a teacher shortage. So the market's now going to say, Mr. Starmer, what are your plans? Lay them out. And if he doesn't want to repeat what happened with Liz Truss, who, by the way, lost her seats, he's going to have to flesh out those plans. And that's when you're going to see the pound and traders react. So he's got a big daunting task ahead of him with the UK economy. We go to NVIDIA. And NVIDIA somehow, despite the challenges of US export controls, is looking to earn about $12 billion from getting chips over to China. It's H2O chips, which cost anywhere from $12,000 to $13,000 each. So they still plan on making some money from there, but they, of course, have been caught in the middle of the geopolitical storms between the US and China. And by the way, speaking of the geopolitical storms, we have to put up a chart where you look at a picture of the geopolitical AI showdown between China and the United States. You've got Tencent, you've got ByteDance, you've got Alibaba facing off, and I'm backing the US to win this, against Microsoft, OpenAI, Google, and the likes, right? So this is where the fight is, in semiconductors, in chips. Biden is trying to give the US an advantage by reducing exports to China. China is trying to find its way. Huawei is in the mix there as well. It's going to be a very, very interesting fight. Let's come to Africa. Tanzania has unveiled its high-speed electric trains. Back in 2021, they signed a $296 million deal with Hyundai Rotem to provide about 17 locomotive trains and something else, about 10 extra carriages called EMUs, electric mobile units. And these essentially are carriages that can power themselves with their own power source for electricity, 160 kilometers per hour. Each train can take about 589 people. Supposed to go from Dar es Salaam to, I think it's Dagodo, for a 4-hour trip is supposed to take about an hour and a half. And, Tanzania is moving forward. The World Economic Forum, or rather the World Bank, has said that these trains and rail are essential for the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement in order to move forward. You've got to have connected rail. So they're planning to expand into, other nations over in Eastern Africa, Uganda and the likes. To Nigeria, finally, President Tinubu yesterday unveiling a 2 trillion naira economic stabilization plan. I remember he announced this back in March. He said he was going to chair it. He also announced a Presidential Economic Coordination Council, PECC. Aliko Dangote is on the council. Tony Olumelu is there. Now, as our colleagues over at This Day newspaper, Nigeria's newspaper of record, pointed out in an article they've written on this, he didn't mention where the funding is going to come from, whether it's going to require, part of a supplementary budget, or my suspicion, maybe from, savings from fuel subsidies. I'm not really sure. So we still have to get some more information on that. And that's all we are.
Rotus, you're a big comedian. you were a bit talking cheap when you said maybe he's going to get money from savings for fuel subsidy removal. You are a bad boy. You are teasing Mr. President. Get away!
Tell us the source, reply.
Because there are no savings for any fuel subsidy removal because subsidy is still being paid. And they're still marking money for subsidy. So you're a very bad boy, Rotus. What you did, God will forgive you. Don't let the Agbado people come for you this morning. Just be talking cheek. So I think it's a good plan to be able to inject that 2 trillion. But my problem is always implementation. Last year, he announced something of this nature, which we thought was going to segue into the last supplementary budget. If you remember, mid-year, where he said we're going to hold petrol price, we're going to cultivate 150,000 hectares and all of that. But till date, CNG buses and all that. But today, we have not seen anything as such. So that's my problem. If you can implement, it's a good plan. I hope you know about part of that 2 trillion. You will first waste 30% of that money to incompetence cost in Nigeria. If you do business, you know what I'm talking about in Nigeria. Secondly, I think 6 months down the line, those that were so willing to see Rishi Sunak go will start to understand that things are not the same. Because this Keir Starmer they've gotten into, you can't compare with New Labour. You had the likes of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown that were very brilliant. They knew what they wanted. They had their plans mapped out. And they had been planning that resurgence of the New Labour since the late 80s. Keir Starmer was just feeling his way in the dark. It was just vibes and inshallah that helped him through. 6 months down the line, when the economic problems start to come, you will see that running the government is not a case of vibes and inshallah. I think I yield the floor.
All right, I'm going to head over to Tanzania. Of course, this is a great development, but what I like about this railway rollout is the fact that we often demonize Chinese aid. And of course, this has been funded by Chinese aid. And in February, I believe China pledged another 1 billion as well to continue to develop the railway infrastructure in Tanzania. Now, the railway in Tanzania has a huge historical significance, as of course it will have a lot of future significance with regards to making Tanzania a logistical hub, not just in East Africa, but for the southern African axis of the continent as well. However, historically, the Russian railway was used by liberation fighters in that region from South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia. They used that railway to get out of the continent so they could access Russia and China, where many of the liberation fighters were trained. So a lot of historical significance around it. Glad to see President Samia Hassan ensuring that the investment is bearing fruit from the Chinese. So I believe that they approached the US, they approached the World Bank in the 60s to try and refurbish the railway, and they turned them down, but China agreed to do it. So a great development. However, across the border in Kenya, I know they're not really excited about this because Kenya is really supposed to be the gem of East Africa. But right now, of course, Kenya's got their own problems that they're dealing with. So I know Kenyans right now are kind of giving Tanzanians a side eye because they would have preferred this win for themselves. Of course, Kenya does have its own SGR, but it's mired by so much controversy because, of course, Kenya hasn't been able to pay back the loan, also a Chinese loan. And there's been ongoing talk about whether the Chinese are going to have to come and take over that SGR railway in Kenya so that they can recoup their loan expenses. So let's see how this is managed as well. We hope we won't hear any stories about China coming to reclaim the railway because there have been issues with repaying the loan.
Well, let's hope that Tanzania doesn't get trapped in Chinese debt trap diplomacy, which is a major challenge for countries like Kenya, for like Djibouti, and also maybe in the future for Tanzania. But as for Keir Starmer, well, look, there is a lot of hope in England at this moment. I mean, 14 years after the Conservatives, ran the country more or less aground, 5 ministers, prime ministers in 5 years. Now, Keir Starmer is taking over at a time the British economy is at a turning point. The jobs, the jobs market is cooling. Inflation is easing, right? Interest rate is still high, 5.25 to about 5%. Now the market, there's a lot of hope. According to RBC analysts, they say the market is very optimistic. That under Keir Starmer, that is pro-Euro, pro-reform, and also, pro the market, pro business, that there's a lot of hope in the horizon. But that remains to be seen. By this weekend, we'll turn our attention to France, where, the markets appear to be looking up. The stocks appear to be doing well. Now that it seems right, certain that the hard right is not going to get a majority in the parliament. EU and China and electric vehicles. The European Union just decided to increase tariffs to about 37.6%, following the example of the US, where tariffs were increased by 100%. And the argument by Brussels is that the Chinese, they are trying to distort the market in Europe. The only difference, the only thing, however, is that they're saying that this will be relative in terms of, the specific manufacturers. And they are asking the Chinese to come and set up factories in Europe and not, to take advantage of the over-subsidization that the Chinese government offers. Amazon is 30. Founded in 1994, by Jeff Bezos. So what next for, Amazon? Every man's company, the everything company. So, but we congratulate them on this 30th anniversary. India's coup. You remember coup? When Nigeria, restricted X, Twitter, as it then was in Nigeria. We were told by the then Minister of Information that Nigerians could migrate to Coup, which is a company that the federal government of Nigeria was associating with, following the example of India. India also had a problem with X. Coup says it has funding problems, and they are going to shut down their services. And they say they cannot fund the technology that is required. Once upon a time in this country, not too long ago, one Minister of Information told us that Coup will, in fact, provide services in all Nigerian languages, because Coup was providing services in microblogging in 10 Indian languages. You see, these people that we put in government, we elect, to lead us. Failure of vision again, with your people. But that's the story from India. And Kukuku, that one minister was promoting.